You're watching Cetome TV. Knowledge is power.
And so now we're talking part 2 of the self-care series that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
So we did exercise and vaccines last week. If you didn't catch that, have a look at our video list and track that down. Those were some really great suggestions that you made for things you can do for self-care that'll make a huge difference for prevention and during your cancer treatment. And today we're going to talk about the other two things that you feel are most important for people to consider, and they do dovetail. And one is your diet in general, and the other is your biome, or a kind of body bacteria or gut bacteria.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And Alex has, with my assistants, made a few little slides to share with you. So in a few minutes, when he gives me the cue, I'm going to switch to sharing my screen and share a tiny little PowerPoint presentation that we made to help bring some of these points he's going to make to life. But why don't we just get you starting us off here? What would you like us to know?
Well, I think this is an excellent opportunity to have a little, preamble on the subject. As you know, I've spent many years studying plant phytochemicals and researching their role in cancer and health and other diseases. And I have a lot to talk about that, but there's so much information and research right now out there. And we could go on forever. So I'm going to minimize the talk about diet and go straight into the biome, because this is really the next area of research in human medicine that we need to conquer. And we are really making some incredible headway through it right now.
And it's stuff you can do yourself.
I think what I'm trying to say here is that the connection of the biome is definitely something we can control. But how do we control it? And that's what I'd like to talk about today.
Okay.
And, what the implications are.
Okay.
But first I'll go over, diet. And why is diet important in cancer? Well, number one, it's involved in gene regulation. We know that. It's involved in many different areas of gene regulation, including non-coding RNA and non-coding DNA and so on. When I was doing my research on the promoter regions of various tumor suppressors and oncogenes, I was looking at the binding sites, spent a lot of time doing that using in silico platforms and, general research. And one thing that really got me interested in plant phytochemicals, because I wasn't doing it beforehand, I was looking at the regulation of these genetic elements in cancer, was finding all of these binding sites for naturally occurring plant phytochemicals in the promoter and the control regions of these genes.
Which means
that they have an evolutionary role in turning on and off genes involved in cancer.
Wow.
That means that, there's binding sites that initiate tumor suppressor genes from things like curcumin and resveratrol and so on. And, ECGC from green tea. And they also downregulate certain oncogenes.
Turn off the cancer-causing stuff and turn on the cancer-stopping stuff.
So this is a human evolution of plant phytochemicals in humans and human genome. So that was very important thing for me to discover, is the plants have that. And I discovered that probably back around, the early 2000s. So since then, I've, obviously been, very interested in it. The other finding that I think is really important about diet and, plants and cancer is the concept of how we break down carcinogens in our body. We have a process, and we have a multitude of different processes that our bodies break down carcinogens. One of the most common ones is through a process called phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes. You've probably heard about them. There's a variety of different enzymes, and they're basically involved in breaking down hydrocarbons and things like that. A lot of drugs and so on are based on a hydrocarbon ring, phenolic ring and so on. So anything with a phenolic sort of structure goes through this process. So what happens is, let's say you've taken this pesticide or this hydrocarbon from Exhaust, then immediately the phase 1 enzymes will try to get rid of it. And what they'll do is they'll attach certain molecules and certain groups to it, often in water or something. And they'll
wash
try
it out.
In a process, yeah. So they're trying to basically create a molecule that you can wash out. But the phase 1 enzymes have this intermediary process where what they do is they end up creating an epoxide. An epoxide is a organic molecule that can be very damaging to DNA. As you probably
Sounds
heard
like
of,
glue.
it is. It's the same thing. Epoxide is the same thing as an epoxide resins, glues. It's a very active molecule, and it binds onto DNA and can damage it and cause mutations and cause cancers. And so epoxides are a carcinogen. So you can take in something that your body is just ignoring that would normally, just pass through your body. But because the process of this phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes, the phase 1 enzymes will turn this into an epoxide. And then what happens is the phase 2 enzymes come along, add another water molecule to it, and all of a sudden it's not an epoxide anymore, and it's an inert water-soluble compound that can be released through sweat or urine or pass through the body. So that is a 2-step process, phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes. So everybody has different levels of phase 1 and phase 2. If you understand that the intermediate between those 2 steps is an actual epoxide, a toxic compound, then you'll understand that having low phase 1 and high phase 2 is something that allows you to better deal with carcinogens. So someone who is healthy and can, go through a lot of chemical exposure is naturally going to have higher levels of phase 2 and lower levels of phase 1. Somebody that is not so healthy and has a hard time dealing with carcinogens is going to have high phase 1 and low phase 2. Plus diet and all sorts of other factors can alter those 2 different enzymes independently. So what we know is that berries have a molecule in them, blueberries, blackberries, and so on, that is able to activate the phase 2. So when you take blackberries and blueberries and all these berries, what you're doing is you're increasing your phase 2 enzymes and reducing the amount of time that this dangerous epoxide residue remains in your body. And so, we know that berries are linked with a reduction in toxins in our body. And we know that people that eat berries have, exceptionally long lifespans, and, just through epidemiology studies, and, lowered risks of many different diseases. It's also interesting to note that these berries that do trigger the high phase 2 enzyme activation are also very common along toxic, highways and garbage dumps and, radioactive dump sites. So they've obviously adapted.
Growing along the highway,
I don't know if it's directly associated, but they seem to be involved in that. So that's one thing. So another element that we have that shows us that diet is really important in cancer is that our digestive tract can go through something called stem cell exhaustion. So, the digestion is very costly. Breaking things down like fats and complex molecules, heavy proteins and very complicated, nutritionally dense foods requires a lot of blood and a lot of enzymes. And what we now know is that, people that have high meat diets and require or eat a lot of organ meats, for example, these complicated nutrient-dense foods have higher risks of pancreatic cancer. And what we believe is the cause is that over time, the stem cells that produce these digestive enzymes just run out of gas, and they start developing mutations, and they turn into cancer-causing stem cells. So limiting your digestion is really important. And now we know this from all of the fasting studies. We know that the mere act of fasting is very important in longevity.
Go ahead. Let me just fiddle with this here. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, once again, it is very essential to limit your digestion over your life. The other thing too is, it's a reduced metabolic activity that really helps extend your life and reduces diseases like cardiovascular disease and cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really important.
So just say, so could you just say what you were just saying again? There was a little kind of glitch in the show there.
Okay.
And just to make sure, because that was kind of an important piece. So you were, can you just repeat?
I'm not sure what part you want me to repeat.
Well, you had just finished just the last point that you made about, sorry, I was distracted, Alex. So if you could help me out.
Okay.
And what did you just say?
Okay, so I'll start from the beginning.
How far back to the beginning?
Digestive tract, stem cell exhaustion.
Oh, thank you. Yes, because you were talking about you were talking about how those kind of lower calorie diets or the fasting diets. So if you could say that again. Okay,
so yeah, so reducing metabolism, eating foods that are easy to digest, and reducing metabolism is key to longevity and reducing stem cell exhaustion, which results in diseases such as pancreatic cancer and liver cancer.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what you mean by reducing metabolism? Because I know that there's times when we want our metabolism to be moving, right? As in like when we're exercising and digesting of things. So
well, that naturally increases metabolism without having to use your digestive tract.
Okay. So having certain things that are running at a high metabolic rate.
We're talking about the digestive tract here.
Specifically, okay.
We're talking about reducing the enzymes and the proteins in the bile that is involved in digestion.
Okay.
That's very important because what happens is the stem cells that create these proteins and these enzymes can burn out over time if they're overworked.
Got it.
And then as they burn out over time, they start developing mutations that cause cancer.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
So those stem cells will turn into cancer in your pancreas and your liver and your digestive pathway. So the overall take-home message from this particular point on diet and cancer is you want to reduce how much food you digest. You want to limit digestion, whether you do that by eating foods that require less digestion or whether you do fasting. That's all a very important point. So stem cell exhaustion is directly associated with diet. Okay.
And what you were saying earlier, I just want to reiterate, it makes so much sense. We hear so often about how berries have this anti-carcinogen effect, or, when people talk about this concept of antioxidants and things like that. But what you're really saying here is we have these two different types of enzymes. And if you have more of the phase 1 and less of the phase 2, you're in trouble.
Yes.
And certain foods and even the digestive process will make you have more of the phase 1 and less of the phase 2.
Or more of the phase 2.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
That's so what you want to go for.
That's right. So you can have more.
You don't want to increase phase 1.
So you can have more of the things like the curcumin and the green tea and the resveratrol and the berries and other things that have been shown to influence that kind of phase 2 side of things. Right. Or as you're saying, you could do like the 5 and 2 diet or something like that to help reduce the amount of digestion your body is having to do each day or each week. Either one or both would be really helpful for prevention.
The take-home message is digestive enzymes and bile are carcinogens for the most part.
All right. So the more you can cut those down.
Yes.
Yeah. But that does, folks, let's not go all or nothing here. That doesn't mean just don't eat. I mean, even the 5 and 2 diet, or what's considered to be one of the healthier ways to kind of, in a standard way, reduce the amount of calories you're taking. You're still eating some good, nutritious food each of those days, just less on certain days.
Exactly.
So, because your body still needs those nutrients to be able to perform all the healthy functions that it needs to do and feed your brain and all of those things. So don't go all or nothing here.
Exactly.
You won't benefit yourself by doing that. All right, what else do you want to tell us about?
Okay, so now I want to talk about diet and the biome, but we're going to need about half an hour for that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information here. Now, as you know, I studied microbiology along with the other disciplines that I studied. And so I had to pull out some of my microbiology notes and go over it in order to prepare this. So I actually made notes for today.
All right.
And so I might have to refer to my notes as I'm reading. Excuse me, I haven't really looked at a lot of microbiology in some time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really kind of revise some of the concepts.
Excellent.
But I think I'm doing okay now.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it.
The biome. What is a biome? The biome is basically all of the microorganisms that live in the gut.
Okay.
And so the human gut microbiome encompasses 10 by the power of 14 residential microorganisms.
Say that again.
10 by the power of 14.
Okay.
10 with a
Yeah, I
superscript
get it.
14.
Huge number there.
Yes.
Okay.
And they include bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoas.
Okay.
The most common ones are gram-positive firmicutes and gram-negative bacteroidetes. Bacterioidetes.
Bacterioids? Bacteria what? You have that written down? Can I help you?
Bacterioids. We'll
Okay.
just call it bacterioids. And they occur most in the distal digestive tract. So the distal digestive tract is the area closest to your anus, so your lower colon. And that's where the cells are 10 to the power of 11 microorganisms per gram content. Mm-hmm. So a gram of tissue contains 10 by the power of 11 of these. So that's a lot. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of...
and what are they all doing there? What is their purpose?
We'll talk about
Okay. That's a lot.
So there's many functions of these things. So in the distal gut microbes, they biosynthesize vitamins for us. Mm. They also create essential amino acids. And one of the most important roles they have is something called SCFAs. And they refer to as short-chain fatty acids. Very important molecules. And basically what happens is they make these short-chain fatty acids from undigested food. And they're the metabolic byproducts from undigested food in the small intestine. So as food passes through our intestine, not everything is digested. And there's a lot of undigested food that comes through in the end. And these microbes convert that into usable, valuable amino acids and vitamins and these short-chain fatty acids. Mm. So the short-chain fatty acids are really important. They're derived from intestinal microbial fermentation of indigestible foods. So things that our bodies can't digest. These microbes digest these, and they create these short-chain fatty acids from them. And then they break these short-chain fatty acids down into molecules called butyrate, propionate, and acetate. And these are the energy source for intestinal bacteria that strengthen the mucosal barriers in our digestive system. Mm. So they're all helping each other and feeding each other and creating molecules that keep each other in check. And having a strong mucosal and epithelial cell barrier is really important because that's where the cancers occur. Mm-hmm. And so they also promote local intestinal immunity through their effects on something called toll-like receptors and antigen-presenting cells, differentiated T cells, lymphoid follicles, and they affect immunity through increased spleen, of all things, CD4 positive T cells, dendritic cells, and systemic antibody expression. So very important, they interact with the immune system, they protect our digestive tract, and they produce important essential amino acids and short-chain fatty acids and, vitamins. Very, very important.
This is the bacteria you're talking about in the biome.
Yes, the biome in general. Yes.
The biome in general. I guess I'm still learning the language then. So the biome includes bacteria, viruses.
Yes, fungi, protozoa.
Okay, thank you.
But we're talking specifically about these bacteria now.
Okay.
And so the good thing to know about this is that you can change your biota very, very quickly. So you can, if you take an antibiotic, you basically, kill your biome. And you can repopulate it with probiotics very quickly. And so within 24 hours, you can induce large shifts by what you eat. So it's very adaptive to what we eat. In fact, also, you've probably heard of the fecal transplants. Well, that was first done in mice. And what happened is they found that when they fed certain diets to mice, it would change their microbiota, and they would either have what's called a negative microbiota or a positive microbiota, as you can imagine. And they could actually wipe out the microbiota, transfer the microbiota through fecal transplants to the other mice, and those mice would all of a sudden have a positive microbiota or a negative microbiota, depending on what was transplanted.
Okay.
So in other words, it's transferable, and you can change it very quickly. And that's a very, very important take-home point here.
That is important, because a lot of people try to avoid antibiotics, and in part, you don't want to rush out and take them if you don't need them. But there's kind of, people have a little bit of information about this biome concept, or that antibiotics kill healthy bacteria. But what you're saying is, really, if you have a healthy diet or take some probiotic, the consequence of taking the antibiotic is overcome.
Right. Yes, to a certain degree.
Mm.
So let's talk about foods and diet and the biome and how it interferes with it. So just a couple of terms that we need to understand right now, because they will be used interchangeably and throughout this conversation. So we have something called prebiotics.
Okay.
A prebiotic is considered a food source that helps the bacteria, the healthy bacteria in particular is what we're looking at. So a prebiotic are typically fiber. You can get them in soybeans, inulins, which are dietary fibers known as fructans, unrefined wheat, barley, raw oats. There's a bunch of sources of prebiotics, but they're mainly fiber-producing plants. Probiotics are actually live bacteria and yeasts that are good for you. That's their kind of definition. So they're common in yogurt, and you can buy a probiotic. So a prebiotic is the food for the healthy bacteria, and a probiotic is the actual bacteria themselves. Okay. So some of the good bacteria that we like to have, I'm going to read you off a list. There's one of the common ones is Bifidobacterium. And it's found to be lowered in obese people and people with IBD, irritable bowel syndrome. There's Rosaburia. It's also known to be lower in IBD. There's Eubacteria, also lowered in IBD. There's Fecal Bacterium, and it's reduced both in obesity and IBD. Akkermansia, which is reduced in both cases, and then Eubacterium rectal, which is high in healthy tissues and healthy intestines. So you want to have high levels of these bacteria species in there. Now there's many different bacterial species. Okay, so how do we go about increasing the healthy bacteria and reducing the bad bacteria?
Don't know.
Okay, well, we're going to go over that. So those are the players of the ones we want.
The Bifto,
Yes, exactly. So vegetable protein increases overall microbial diversity. And diversity is good. You want to have a lot of different species in there because they all have their own unique function. They all maybe are involved in, a certain process or an amino acid production or something. So whey and pea protein increase Bifidobacteria and lactobacillus. They also decrease the pathogenic bacteria that are not good for you, which are called bacteroides and Clostridium. So pea protein has also been observed to increase intestinal short-chain fatty acid levels. So as you know, they're anti-inflammatory, they're important for the mucosal layer, they're important for the epithelial cells. So you want to have anything that produces high levels of SCFAs is good for you. Because they benefit the mucosal barrier. So pea protein increases that. So now animal protein, on the other hand, does the opposite. It decreases the healthy bifidobacterium. It also increases what we call bile-tolerant anaerobes. And these are bacteria that you don't want to have in your body. And so some of those are the bacteroids, the Allostipes and Clostridia and Bilophilia. So you want to have low levels of that, but animal protein increases that. Interesting how vegetable protein does the opposite. So if you want to cue the slide.
Cue the
slide.
Okay, hold on a second. We're going to do a little share screen action here. I'm going to go to where the heck is it? There it is. And we're going to go here. And I'm just going to do a little maximizing of said screen here. Oh, hang on. We're going to view our slideshow. Start. Woohoo! Okay, folks.
There we go.
Slide numero uno.
So this was an interesting slide, I thought. I like the way it's presented and so on, and it shows how different bacterial species and different protein sources change those bacterial species. So the carnivore diets, that are so popular these days. I don't know what to say because I know many people who take these. I have friends on them that swear by them and so on. And I really think they're a bad thing.
You take what?
The carnivore diets.
Okay. You mean like more of a keto? Is that what you mean by carnivore diet?
No, it's just meat only, nothing else.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
It's a thing.
Okay.
Jordan Peterson's one of the big proponents of it, of all things. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
So carnivore diets. What they do, and there's been some good human studies, is they reduce an important butyrate producing bacteria called Rosaburia. They also reduce Eubacterium rectal. They decrease butyrate and small chain fatty acids. And also IBD patients possess a lower fecal count of Rosaburia and butyrate producing bacteria. So they're also associated with initiation of IBD. And so here's a little chart. I think it shows you, how it increases, how the plant protein increases the healthy bacteria, increases the short chain fatty acids, and then decreases the bad bacteria, whereas animal proteins kind of do the opposite. So, that's one of the mechanisms we understand on how animal proteins are not so good. Now, obviously, animals are not just protein. There's many different things in them. So there's also fats. So let's look at fats now. So animal fats. You can take the slide away now.
Okay. Do you want
back to us?
Back to us. All right.
So animal fats are typically high saturated and trans fats. We know they're not good for us. Sure, we need some of them, but not much. Very, very micro amounts. They tend to decrease the lactobacillus, which is a healthy bacteria, and they increase the bacteroides and the biophilia and the fecal bacterium. In fact, a study in lard-fed mice showed that they had increased systemic TLR activation, white adipose tissue, which is basically bad fat in our bodies, inflammation, and impaired insulin sensitivity, which is diabetes, compared to fish or compared to mice that were given fish. So lard-fed versus fish oil-fed.
Okay.
Definitely, you do not want to be lard-fed.
Okay.
Well, we know that. So the fats that are in fish and veggies are basically high. They're high in mono and polyunsaturated fats, and obviously very, very low in saturated and trans fats. Obviously, you've got to look at each individual food source. So these high mono and polyunsaturated fat diets from veggies and fish, they increase the bifidobacterium, increase the lactobacilli, and another species called vermucomicrobiome, vermicumicrobia.
Thankfully,
we
with
really
Google,
need a bacteriologist
we
for
do.
this.
You can just start typing something that sounds like that, and Google will help you find the
Yes,
answer.
exactly. I have a hard time saying these in the best days. So definitely you want to be focusing on plant protein and fish and veggie-based fats and oils, not animals.
Right.
So here's an interesting one, sugars and sweeteners.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we've been after artificial sweeteners for years, haven't we?
I haven't.
The
But,
world has.
well,
Find me something wrong with them. Okay,
there
well,
has been some
here we
speculation.
go. We
Yeah.
found something wrong with
Oh.
them, finally. Unfortunately. So artificial sweeteners tend to decrease the good bifidobacteria, but they also decrease the Clostridia, which are bad, which is a positive thing. But they also decrease the lactobacilli, which is a good bacteria. And they also increase the bacteroids, which are bad. So, you know, 50-50. Glucose, on the other hand, which is raw sugar and supposed to be terrible for us, increases a bifidobacteria, good bacteria, decreases the bacteroids, which is a bad. So, you know, what the data is actually showing is that in regards to the biome, artificial sweeteners may actually be unhealthier than pure cane sugar, glucose. Not by much.
You said, did you say raw sugar or?
Yeah, glucose is
okay.
Glucose is cane sugar.
Sure.
It's the simplest form of sugar.
Okay. But for the sake of our discussion, a lot of the sugar that's kind of standard in folks' diets is the white sugar, which is like 3 times refined from the raw.
But it's just purified glucose.
Right. So I was just kind of wondering.
It's still better.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, unrefined sugar is going to have a bit of fiber in it, so it's not going to get broken down as much, but it's not going to taste as much, so you need more of it. You know, glucose is the thing that it creates the sweetness.
Okay.
So yeah, sugars, sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, not necessarily such a good thing for the biome.
Well, I did make a note. It's kind of, you said 50-50.
Yeah.
It takes down the goodies, but it also seems to help with some of the bad.
Yes.
But the sugar doesn't have the same.
Well, it increases one of the bads, takes down another bad, and then increases 2 goods.
Okay.
So it's 50-50.
I mean, and again, we're talking about biome here. So again, we don't want to go all or nothing and just run out and start doing lots of sugar here.
No, definitely not.
Because there are other side effects, of course, and consequences to that.
Of course.
Yes. But that's interesting to know.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have to, again, moderation.
Moderation,
right?
Definitely.
Makes such a big difference. Yeah.
So probiotics. So probiotics are actually quite good. They increase the bacterial abundance. They increase one of the good bacteria, bifidobacteria. They increase another good one, lactobacilli, a streptococcus, and they increase the total aerobes and total anaerobes, which contains, you know, some good. And they also reduce the bad coliform bacteria and the heliobacteria and the bad E. coli. So probiotics are good. Plant polyphenols, that's, you know, the main phytochemical that has anti-cancer benefits in plants. There's many different polyphenols, but that's kind of the healthy thing that people are all about.
And that's where we were talking about earlier, some, like, would that be the curcumin and some of those things you were talking about?
Sort of. Let's just say they're one of those classes.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, I would say so. Yes. So what they do is they increase the good bifidobacteria and they increase the lactobacilli. They decrease the bad bacteroids, the Clostridia, the Salmonella, the Typhimurium, the Staphylococcus aureus. And so Q slide.
Cue slide. We go. All right, folks. Hang on a second here. We're going to go from it. Okay, I guess hang on a second here. There's your slide.
So as you can see, the different diets and how they affect overall biome in humans. I think this is an important slide because we've known for years through epidemiology that the Mediterranean diet is what allows you to live longest with the least amount of cardiovascular disease and cancer.
Okay, so walk us through this though, because
so on the top we have the basic Western diet that's high in saturated fats and unhealthy foods for the biome.
Okay.
And we see the bacteria colonies or bacteria species that it increases and decreases that are healthy and bad. So, it's doing a lot of bad things.
So it gets rid of the bifidobacteria and those that are those are good.
Yeah.
You want those, and this gets rid of it, and then it makes more of the bacterioids and the entero, which you don't want.
Exactly.
And the arrow is heading over to inflammation there.
CVD, cardiovascular disease, inflammation, type 2 diabetes, and obesity.
Okay.
And they didn't include cancer in this study, but it's in there. All of these are associated with cancers.
It's like a process.
So gluten-free diet, it's not necessarily such a good thing.
Same thing, isn't it?
It is.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's because it's missing a lot of grains and a lot of the fiber that's really important to support the healthy bacteria.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So, that's with her, so you got the high meat and then you got the low fiber and low grains.
Neither are good.
No.
And then over here.
The Mediterranean diet decreases all of those, as we know. And that's the process that it uses.
Well, it increases the good ones. I see those arrows going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they're not the bad ones. So here we've got the bacterioids, but that's also going up over here.
Exactly. So, it's not going to be the perfect diet.
Okay.
And there are some bacterioids that may be important at certain concentrations. So, obviously this is incredibly complicated. And, there's many different subspecies of each type. Obviously that's going to be the case. So, you're not going to have this generalized diet that is going to be specifically good for every bacteria colony, good or bad.
But this one, the Mediterranean diet, seems to cover, it's certainly far and away over the gluten-free or the Western diet, or as you were saying, the carnivore diet or the extreme fat diets and things like that.
Exactly.
Interesting. Wow. And it doesn't feel like, now that you've run through this, it doesn't feel so overwhelming because, for a long time I've heard about how you have to have healthy bacteria, but didn't know.
It's actually pretty simple.
It is actually really quite.
Common sense.
Yes.
So now the Mediterranean diet also improves, reduces obesity, obviously, improves the lipid profile, reduces inflammation, and it increases, obviously the lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, Prevotella, and decreases Clostridium altogether. So, okay, this is the biome and diet. How does the biome and diet relate to cancer care? That's the big question. And does it relate to cancer care? It sure does. So we know, and we've been looking at this for a long time. I'm going to give you 3 examples here of how it relates to cancer care. So colon cancers can occur on either the left or the right. And
you mean we have a colon on our left and a one on our right?
It goes right across, and you have the transverse colon, yes. Okay. So you have your left-sided, your transverse, and then your right. Your right side, your transverse, then your left side. And your left-sided attaches to your anus.
Okay.
So that's what they look at mostly when they do colonoscopy. Now, if you remember, that's also the distal digestive tract that I discussed in the beginning, where most of the bacteria live, and where changes to diet are most effective, and where having a healthy diet really protects the mucosal layer and where all these amino acids and everything happen.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the area that's going to be obviously an area that needs to be protected through diet.
Mm-hmm.
So colon cancers on the right side are kind of unique. And that's because it's the start of the colon digestive process. And they contain a type of bacteria called Fusobacterium nucleatum. And it seems to only occur in the right colon. So what we know about this is so people with right-handed colon cancers have a much tougher time and shorter duration of treatment, and really have a lot more negative prognostic features than people with left-handed colon cancers. There's genetic differences that are specific to each side, but more importantly, we know that it's based on this bacteria, Fusobacterium nucleatum. And so it only occurs on the right side, and we know this is a component that interferes with or is associated with right-sided tumors, because when we see tumors that have metastasized from the right colon to other parts of the body, they also have this nucleatum bacteria with them. And that nucleatum bacteria would not normally live there, but it lives in these tumors as they move to different parts of the body. So that's a very fascinating observation.
Yeah, they've got some sort of relationship.
Yeah, so this bacteria, what we now know is it results in chemotherapy resistance. And the way it does that is it reduces loss of these what we call message interrupting RNA. And the message interrupting RNA are MIR18A and MIR4802. So what these are, message interrupting RNA is an area of research that I was following quite a bit when I first got into molecular and biochemistry. It's been a huge part of genetics. And basically what it is, these are small non-coding RNA molecules that are about 22, 23 base pairs long, nucleotides in this case because they're RNA, and they just float around in the blood. And when they see a complementary 22 base pair section on a piece of RNA that's about to be transcribed, they'll bind onto it and prevent it from being transcribed. So there's a lot of drugs being designed on this. It's a tool that's often used for turning off genes, but it turns off the expression of the protein. And so it's a process that occurs, it's called RNA silencing, and it occurs post-transcriptional regulation of gene expression. So once the gene has been transcribed into messenger RNA, these little microRNAs bind onto it before it gets turned into a protein and prevent it, and they take it to this area where it gets degraded. They take it to this recycling depot for protein or for RNA and proteins and so on. I believe it's called I can't remember the name of it now. It's not important though. What you need to know is that this is a common process in cancer, these microRNAs, message interrupting as they're called, and they prevent certain genes from being transcribed.
And that stops the chemotherapy from working.
Well, in this particular case, these are important microRNAs that will help turn off the tumor, and they are inhibited by this Fusobacterium nucleatum. So then also, this Fusobacteria causes the tumor cells to activate a process called autophagy. And autophagy is a way that cells break down certain things for recycling. And so what this bacteria does is it causes the colon cancer cells in the right colon to break down the chemotherapy drugs through autophagy. And so also studies have shown that this bacteria downregulates 992 genes expressed and upregulates another 1,466 genes associated or involved in colon cancer. So it has a massive effect on gene regulation.
Yeah.
It's not just and it has multiple mechanisms of, so it affects the colon cancer cells by microRNA. It affects it by altering their gene expression. It affects it by helping them boost autophagy, where they break down the chemotherapy drugs. So there's a big mechanism here, a series of mechanisms.
This is just this one bacteria.
Yeah. So we always recommend when a patient has right-handed colon cancer, we always suggest take an antibiotic prior to getting chemotherapy.
Get rid of that.
Get rid of that Fusobacterium. Yeah. And so, you could just ask your doctor for that. It is done in certain areas. I know doctors, I know oncologists that do that all the time. They swear by it. It hasn't been completely accepted by the medical system across the board, but it's something definitely we recommend for our patients. And so on that note, there was a study on beans. So how do we also affect colon cancer treatment? So there's a study on this 9-bean diet, and what they showed that there was a huge risk reduction in slowing the risk of cancers, of getting colon cancers, reducing the effects of polyps that turn into cancer, and also when they gave it to colorectal cancer patients on chemotherapy, they lived a lot longer. And they had a longer progression-free survival and overall survival than patients that didn't eat a lot of these beans while they're taking cancer. So it's got multiple effects here. It prevents the prevents the occurrence, and it also helps slow down the growth of colon cancers. And so obviously, as we know, beans are high in lignans and saponins, and they help increase the, so what they do is they end up creating, they help break down, they create bacteria that helps break down digestive resistant starch.
The beans do.
The beans do, yes, and that's their mechanism. And what they do is they increase the production of these small chain fatty acids that protect the colon and protect the cells in the top layer of the colon, and also protect the mucosal layer. So they protect colon cells from becoming cancerous. They also have phytochemicals in them called triterpenoids, flavonoids, inositol, protease inhibitors, and sterols. And these are all anti-cancer agents.
Oh, wow.
So we believe that the beans also have some effect in reducing the F-nucleatum too. Now that is being studied now.
Now, just to be clear, that F-nucleatum you've been telling us about, is that only found in the right-handed colon
and
cancers?
a little bit of it is found in the small intestine.
Okay. But mostly right-handed, right side colon.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can you help me, because I'm new to all this stuff, when you started this talk today, you talked about phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes. So tell us about how that pertains to the beans.
Interesting. I haven't made that association yet.
Okay. Maybe there isn't one.
There probably is somewhere.
But it
along
sounds
the
like there
line.
must be more phase 2 happening there. If the general theme was the more phase 2 you have, the better the outcome.
I think understanding the phase 2 concept is a preventative factor.
Oh, I see.
It's way before you get cancer.
I see.
Years, like 20 years before you get cancer.
Oh, okay. So start now.
Yeah.
Start now having more of those berries and all that stuff. Okay.
The beans are showing an actual role that is more specific to the initial stages of cancer in the colon and slowing the growth of cancers that are already established.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is a huge factor. And we know that there is a biome connection there. There's probably more to it. Obviously, as I just mentioned, they contain many phytochemicals that regulate genetic expression of oncogenes. So, that's another factor. It's a multitude approach. So there's another example of how the biome is affected by cancer and how you can make a difference. And that's what we're covering. This example of colon cancer was the first example. And just to reiterate, what you do is if you have a right-handed colon cancer, you eat beans, lots of them every week. And you also get preferably try to get an antibiotic for F-nucleatum before you do any chemotherapy or treatment. Right-handed colon cancers. So lung cancers, let's talk about lung cancers.
Okay.
So fiber, as you know, is a prebiotic. And it's the non-digestible foods that promote the growth of probiotics. So fiber is not normally digestible, and it promotes the growth of the probiotics, which are the bacteria.
Okay, got it.
And yogurt is a probiotic food. So I'm sure you've all heard of the recent study. We've discussed it before, but a diet that's high in yogurt and fiber reduces cancer risk in people that smoke and people that don't smoke, reduces lung cancer risk by more than 30%. That's significant. That's huge. So if you're a fireman, or if you're a smoker or a truck driver, or anyone who has exposure to chemicals that cause lung cancers, you want to be eating fiber and a probiotic, you know, a couple times a week, because that will reduce your risk of developing a cancer, you know, a lung cancer by 30%.
Wow.
So what is the mechanism? Here, the mechanism that we believe is involved in this process is it you with a high fiber diet, you increase the bacteroidetes and the firmicutes. You increase that ratio with a high fiber diet. And that results in increased levels of circulating short chain fatty acids, so circulating through the blood. More importantly, this diet of this yogurt and fiber alleviates the Th2, which is a activation process. Th2 cell-mediated allergic airway inflammation by reducing the capacity of lung-resident dendritic cells to drive the Th2 type process. So in a simplistic terms, what's that saying is it's reducing airway
lung
inflammation.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, as you know, can be a cause of lung cancer.
Sure. Well,
So,
any kind of inflammation.
But what's interesting is it's doing it by manipulating the response of the dendritic cells. So I think what's important with this particular study is it's showing how your gut biome that stays in your gut affects distant organs and affects immune cells in those organs.
Right.
So that is quite a fascinating finding.
Wow.
You know, our gut, what we eat, the bacteria cells there, and the proteins they produce really can reach out and affect other organs in our body. And they can do that not only by manipulating genetic expression, but they manipulate how the immune system functions in those organs. I think that's
the types of foods that you eat and the bacteria that they build or kill is influencing
by
these
gut
things.
bacteria.
Wow.
So I want to finish off with one. So right there is lung cancer. So just to reiterate, colon cancer, beans, and obviously, you know, lots of other healthy phytochemicals, but also the antibiotic for the F nucleatum if you have right-handed. Lung cancer, the yogurt and the fiber combination, or probiotic and fiber combinations, huge reduction, especially if you're a smoker or a fireman. You know, I know a lot of firemen, and you know they need to really take heed of that. Now the third one is immune therapy. So lots of people are taking immune therapies. You know, the common ones are PD-1 inhibitors and CTLA-4 inhibitors. And we've started to really notice an interaction between the biome and the benefits of immune therapy. So what we now know is that the bacterioid actually enhances CTLA-4 efficiency, and so enhances anti-CTLA-4. So in other words, the bacterioids enhance the ability of ipilimumab, which is an anti-CTLA-4 drug, to work. And it works via T helper cells. Those are the T helper cells. And what it does is it causes a cross-reactivity between the bacteria antigens and the tumor neoantigens. So to reiterate.
Yes, you're going to say that 3 times so we all understand.
Cross-reactivity.
I know it's exciting, but I don't quite get it.
This is a new concept.
Cross-reactivity.
Yeah, so what this means is that these bacteria enter, when they're at a high dose, what they do is they somehow cause these drugs such as CTLA-4 to target tumor cells because what they do is they have this bacterial antigen on them that mimics a tumor antigen.
Okay.
So, in other words, they teach the immune cells to recognize their bacterial antigens that are similar to the tumor antigens. And so, therefore, the immune system can better recognize the tumors based on a antigen from these bacteria.
Wow.
So it's almost like teaching the immune system to target the tumor cells.
Right.
So by having a high level of this bacteroid fragilis, you are allowing ipilimumab to work better for you because of this cross-reactivity.
And how would I make sure I have a high level of that? Because that sounds important.
Well, we went over the bacteroids. We presented the charts. I've got a few more things to cover, so it's all on
Go
this.
back and
Go back
read it
and
again.
look over it again.
Or
Yes.
listen again.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Mediterranean diet increases bacteroids, as you know. That was one of the main things.
Thank you for giving me the answer.
Yes.
There.
Now, another study they did is they found that if they gave a bifidobacterium, which is a healthy bacterium that we first discussed, when it was given orally, it increased tumor infiltration and interferon gamma production of the TILs, the CD8 positive tumor infiltrating lymphocytes. We've discussed those before. So tumors have these CD4 positive Tregs, as they call them, and they also have CD8 positive TILs. And so the TILs are the ones that go into the tumor and start attacking it and get shut down by the PD-1 axis. When you reactivate it by taking a PD-1 inhibitor, these TILs are what kill the tumors from the inside out. And one of the processes is through interferon gamma. So therefore, when you take this bifidobacterium, it increases the ability of your immune system to enter tumor cells with cells such as TILs, tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, that are involved in this PD-1 based immunotherapy. And as we know, if you have a high TIL ratio, PD-1 inhibitors will be very, very effective for you.
Okay, so the Mediterranean diet increases
this.
bifidobacterium.
So if you're on a PD-1 inhibitor, start taking the Mediterranean diet right away.
And maybe a probiotic?
And a probiotic, yeah. So also this bifidobacterium taken orally improves both basal tumor control of anti-PD-1 efficiency by increased activation of the spleen and intratumoral dendritic cells. Again, this is showing that the gut affects other areas of the organs or other areas of the body, such as the spleen, that is helping to boost the immune system against tumors.
Right. Yeah, that's
this is
remarkable.
This bifidobacterium once again.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it gets right into the tumor.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Allows the immune system to activate the tumor. And then one more point that I just want to finish up with. In stool samples from patients treated with anti-CTLA4 antibodies, such as ipilimumab, they showed high bacteroidites, which was associated with a lower incidence of treatment-induced colitis. So one of the side effects of ipilimumab is treatment-induced colitis, and it can be something that prevents patients from getting the treatment.
You mean they don't want to experience that side effect?
It can be a grade 3 or 4 side effect where the person dies from it.
Oh.
So typically, if you have really bad colitis or diarrhea, and you're on a PD-1 inhibitor, I've seen patients get taken off them.
Sure.
Or ipilimumab. It's one of those side effects that can prevent you from being treated with these. And once again, it's shown to be associated with low levels of this bifidobacterium. So high levels of this bifidobacterium lowers this treatment-induced colitis.
Wow.
So you're reducing side effects and increasing efficiency, all with this Mediterranean-based diet, or by increasing certain populations and taking probiotics and fiber. So there's a host of important factors that all lead back to something that you can change today.
Yeah.
Stay away from the carnivore diets and focus on the fiber and promoting the healthy bacteria.
Yeah. So, fruit, veg, grains for your fiber.
Grains, lots of grains, yeah.
And animal protein a couple times a week.
Yeah.
But not.
You don't want to avoid animal protein altogether.
No, as you were saying, you need some for
little
certain
bit.
bacteria.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Wow. That's quite remarkable. I really appreciate you going over that point that what's happening in your gut has an effect on
all of your body.
Like noticeable, measurable influence on how other processes go in your organs. And
what I'm excited to learn about is see how it affects if it's able to cross the blood-brain barrier, and how it affects brain tumors. I think that could be an interesting area of research, and I'm going to have to look into that a little bit.
Well, good. Let us know when you get some more data on that. I'm sure there are many patients out there who would be very interested to have that information.
So I apologize for going so long. There's so much information that I had to leave out. It was really tough making this. I wanted to go on and really give a good example, of different cancers, but we have such limited time with this.
Oh, we do.
We have a lot to cover.
And you did cover a lot. I have mounds of notes and didn't get it all. So as Alex instructed me to do, I'm going to encourage you as well to rewind and take more notes. If you have any kind of questions in your mind about what he was getting at or what that means, or what, the many points that you made, Alex, have a rewatch of the video. And you're also always welcome to post comments and questions here for us to pass to Alex to answer. And of course, you can always contact him directly at cetome.com and arrange to speak to him for you specifically.
Thank you for watching Cetome TV. Subscribe below and stay informed.